This is Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review with your final college football bowl preview video. We will be breaking down the final 8 bowl games of the slate for the games taking place on Saturday, December 31st, New Year's Eve, Monday, January the 2nd. We're gonna do all the bowls that are not the 2 playoff games. The 2 semifinals, we'll save those until the end of the video, since those are the big games that are obviously national championship implications. So we'll save the Washington, Alabama, and the Ohio State Clemson game breakdowns for the end of this video. We'll do everything else before that. So let's start with LSU Louisville. It's the first game up on Saturday, December 31st in the Citrus Bowl down in Orlando. And for LSU, obviously the big news coming into this bowl game is, excitement should be there for this LSU team. They're thrilled that Ed Orgeron was named the permanent head coach. They took the interim tag off him. I think that's going to make LSU excited to play this bowl game. They're going to be looking to get a victory here. How much does the Leonard Fournette absence mean? Well, Leonard Fournette, obviously, the big decision, along with Christian McCaffrey for Stanford, that they would not play in this game to prepare for the NFL draft, not play in their bowl game to prepare in their NFL draft. Darius Geis is a very capable backup. Let's not forget that. And he's certainly capable of carrying the ball. And my concern for Louisville going into this game is, it's not exactly a Louisville team that we saw great effort and great energy from them down the stretch. Once they lost that Houston Cougars game 36-10, which took any hope out of the playoffs for Louisville, boy, they looked like they had almost packed it in to some extent. They come back against Kentucky in their season finale, didn't play well in that game, outgained by 20 yards. As 28.5-point favorites, they lose 41-38 to the Kentucky Wildcats in their finale. I've got concerns about Louisville here. I really do. Do they show up? Are they excited? Are they, for trying to make one last big showing here for Lamar Jackson? And try to get him a bowl victory. Obviously, that's going to be the concern. That's something you're going to want to keep an eye on closer to Saturday. How motivated and excited is Louisville for this game? It's tough because initially I was looking toward LSU, but the Fournette injury kind of threw me off a little bit of the LSU side. I'm not sure I'm interested in Louisville, and there's another emerging concern here for LSU and really for the SEC in general. Is it possible that maybe this conference outside of Alabama is a little bit overrated and overvalued here in the bowl season? Look at Monday's bowl results early this week. The SEC getting into bowl activity for the first time. Mississippi State and Vanderbilt played on Monday. Both of those teams 0-2 against the spread. Neither one sniffed a point spread cover, and neither one really looked all that impressive. Sloppy, poor play from both teams. I know Mississippi State still won their game, but 1 point over Miami, Ohio, not impressive to say the least. And of course, Vanderbilt blown off the field by NC State. So a bad start from a point spread perspective to the bowl season for SEC teams. It's another emerging concern. Maybe this conference just a little bit overrated. Maybe this conference just not very good, not as good as they've been in the past outside of Alabama. So a lot of things to factor in this game. This is a bowl game I do not expect to have any action on. So with that in mind, we'll go to Kentucky, Georgia Tech. In the next bowl game on the Saturday slate. This game is taking place in the Tax Slayer Bowl between these two teams. It is taking place in Jacksonville, Florida at Everbank Field. It used to be the Gator Bowl, but now they're calling it the Tax Slayer Bowl because, every other bowl has got a damn sponsor involved. Why not this one? What else is new? This is another game where I'm not really rushing to back Kentucky. They have taken the early money. They opened as a 4.5-point underdog in this game, down to 3.5 now. Early money showed up on the Wildcats. Again, the SEC, I've got some concerns. They haven't started the bowl season well. This Kentucky team, now they did finish the season pretty well when you look at what they did. They won 5 of their last 7 games, 5-2 straight up finish to the season, 5-2 against the spread as well down the stretch for this Kentucky team. Now, the win against Louisville, I do have to put an asterisk to that, though. Louisville coming off the dream-crushing loss to Houston. Again, you give Kentucky credit for playing well, but that was partially a Louisville letdown as far as I'm concerned, winning that game. The Tennessee loss, 49-36. Again, Tennessee just had their dreams crushed. Other than that, they beat Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Missouri. Austin P, South Carolina, New Mexico State. When they stepped up in class, the Kentucky Wildcats, the Alabama, and teams like that, they didn't really exactly fare well. That's the concern for me. Now, they did get better quarterback play down the stretch. I mean, this offense really came alive. Stanley Williams was fantastic running the football for this team. There's no denying that. They got adequate enough quarterback play from Steven Johnson. He had some inconsistencies this season, but he also improved a little bit in the passing game late. And it's not like Georgia Tech's defense is superb as a shutdown unit. Georgia moved the ball, put 27 on them. North Carolina shredded them for 48 points. Duke hung a 35 points on Georgia Tech. Pitt hung 37 points against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech defensively, not a unit I trust. More than the side. I'm probably going to stay away from the side in this game because, again, I'm starting to get some concerns with the SEC as a conference right now here in the bowl season, but I'd probably look to the over in this game. 62 is the total right now. I think Georgia Tech going to be able to run the ball with the triple option against Kentucky. Kentucky's defense against the run was not good. 5.2 yards per carry allowed, 227 rushing yards per game yielded on the ground by Kentucky. So Georgia Tech should do what they want offensively, but I'm not convinced Georgia Tech on defense is going to stop Kentucky. So I do think we get a higher scoring game and look over the total between the Wildcats and Yellow Jackets. Actually, we're going to come back to the playoffs at the end. We're going to move ahead to Monday. Iowa taking on Florida on the first game of the slate on Monday, January 2nd, the Outback Bowl. Very interesting game here. Florida, to me, I think the better team here, a very good defense. There's no denying that. They did sort of end the season on fumes, running on fumes, I guess you could say. 2 straight losses to Florida State and Alabama in the SEC championship game, but really no shame in losing either of those games. Just how much gas is left in their tank. Again, their offensive play, Austin Appleby, very erratic at the quarterback spot. We'll have to see if he gets the starting quarterback assignment again. Luke Del Rio is still recovering from a shoulder injury, but they haven't made an announcement whether he will be playing here in the Outback Bowl. I think if Del Rio is capable of playing, they'll go with him. But if he's not, we'll see Austin Appleby once again at the quarterback spot for Florida. On the flip side, I just don't know if I see much to like with Iowa. I know Iowa ended the season with 3 straight wins. Michigan, Illinois, and Nebraska. That's definitely a positive. But it's an Iowa team that still hasn't overly impressive this season. It's just a question of whether Florida is a team I'm comfortable laying points with. I mean, their offense has been very, very erratic. Probably a game I'm not going to get involved with in the end. Probably a game that stays under the total, but not getting any bargains, 40.5. So I lean under, but that's a real low total. You can almost get over a 40 or 40.5 total in college football by accident. So I lean under, but I'm not sure the value's there. Western Michigan, Wisconsin in the Cotton Bowl. Of course, Western Michigan, undefeated season, winning the MAC championship to earn their spot here in the Cotton Bowl against Wisconsin. I'd like to take points with Western Michigan. In fact, that is the way I would lean in this game. If I bet it, and I still might before kickoff, I would look to Western Michigan plus the points. But my concern here is the Western Michigan defense, wasn't exactly strong this season. They really won a lot of games because of their offense with Zach Terrell, the receiving core, and the ground game. But their defense was, and they didn't exactly face a litany of good offenses. I mean, we saw a defense that gave up 35 to Toledo, even 23 points by Ohio's offense in the MAC championship game. Kent put up 21 against them. Eastern Michigan put 31 points up against them. Northern Illinois put 30 points up against them. And the concerning numbers for Western Michigan is 4.7 yards per carry allowed, 151 rushing yards per game. Not exactly stout against the run. And I guarantee you, Wisconsin's ground attack is better than any ground attack Western Michigan saw in the MAC conference schedule. So that's definitely some concerns right now with Western Michigan from a matchup standpoint. The question is for Wisconsin, it's a team that, lost in the Big Ten championship game to Penn State, 38-31. Any hopes of the playoffs dashed with that loss. You just wonder, are they excited enough for the Cotton Bowl against a MAC team? I know it's an undefeated MAC team, but it's still a small conference MAC team. To be able to put the foot down and win this game by the margin that is required to cash a ticket, laying 7.5, 8 points like they are in this game. That's the concern. Western Michigan's offense is good, though, and they're going to be a test here for Wisconsin. I mean, Western Michigan's got tons of weapons. offensively that are going to be a major challenge. What a job PJ Fleck has done here with this Western Michigan team. Obviously, they're going to be up against it stopping Corey Clement in the run game, but definitely you like what we've seen here with this Western Michigan offense with Zach Terrell leading them at the quarterback spot. Good group of receivers, solid ground game as well. Again, if I'm betting this game, I don't want to lay any points with Wisconsin, and there's no way I'm laying points with Wisconsin, but can I trust Western Michigan's defense to show up to trust them? So lean to the Broncos at this stage. USC Penn State in the Rose Bowl. Again, USC, tremendous finish to the season, but we're talking about now laying 7 points in this game, almost a touchdown in this game, against a Penn State team that's proven to be capable. I mean, Penn State, you look at what they've done. They beat Ohio State, pretty impressive. Their only loss during the Big Ten season against Michigan, 49-10. But since then, just an outstanding team. Won every game, covered every point spread. 9-0 straight up, 8-0-1 against the spread. Penn State to finish the season. And again, I talked about the concerns I have about the Pac-12 and bowl season. I'm not convinced that conference outside of Washington. Maybe you throw this USC team in there the way they finished this season. They did finish strong. Outside of Washington, USC, maybe Colorado. But outside of that, not a great conference. There were so many weak teams. Oregon was down. Stanford was down. The two Arizona teams weren't any good. Utah, mediocre. I mean, there's just a lot of mediocre programs this year in Pac-12 football. So you just worry that USC and the conference they're from a little overvalued here. I know they're playing close to home. It's the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. I get all that. It's going to be almost like a home game here for this USC team. But I wouldn't sell Penn State short. I wouldn't sell Joe Moorhead, the offensive coordinator for Penn State, short. You give him this amount of time to get this offense, with new plays, some wrinkles thrown in, some trick plays. He did a tremendous job coordinating this offense because this offense has mediocre to decent personnel. I don't know if it's got great personnel. He got a lot out of Trace McSorley, great running back, and Saquon Barkley, adequate enough receivers, and Moorhead just coordinated and called plays to go to the strengths of a lot of these Penn State offensive skill position playmakers. And that's why this Penn State offense was tough to stop, especially down the stretch. I mean, they were a machine. They scored, 29, 38, 24, 62, 41, 45, 39, 45, 38 points during this winning streak. Very impressive stuff from this Penn State Nittany Lions offense. And USC's defense, good down the stretch, but Notre Dame did dent them a bit in their last game. They haven't faced a boatload of quality offenses down the stretch. They really haven't. So we'll see here in this game. Again, I think the point spread a little bit too high. I do think we get points in this game. I do like both offenses to move the ball. 60 is the total. I would lean over the total, and right now, from a side perspective, would certainly lean to Penn State plus the points. Auburn, Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl. I will not be laying anything with Oklahoma and Bob Stoops here. No, not at all. I mean, the numbers come down. I mean, Auburn was opened up +6. They're down to +3. I understand that, but still tricky for me. It's a question of who's healthy for Auburn. Is their running back going to be good to go? That's something you want to keep an eye on prior to this Sugar Bowl game. But Oklahoma in a bowl game, in a big game, with Bob Stoops, a little bit tricky to trust them. I know they won the Big 12 championship beating Oklahoma State, but got some concerns with Oklahoma there. Again, the problem is, if you liked Auburn, you missed the best number. I mean, it's at the point now where at +3, it's hard to find any more value with Auburn. If you didn't bet Auburn already, and I did bet a little Auburn when it opened, it's pretty hard to get there now. There's probably some value on Oklahoma, but, Sooners in a bowl game with Bob Stoops. That's, to me, again, they've had too much of a track record of coming up short in these games for me to trust them. All right, let's go now to the two semifinal matchups. To wrap up this video, the college football playoff begins with Washington taking on Alabama, the first of the two semifinals. This is the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl on New Year's Eve. And we've actually seen some steady Washington money start to trickle in. It opened up, Alabama took early money, went up as high as I believe 16 and a half, and then steady Washington money has come in. It's back down to about 14 pretty much across the board. And you know what? You cannot. Alabama, to me, is going to win this football game. It's just a question of whether they cover the number. But I don't think you can undersell Chris Peterson, his coaching job, his ability to get a team prepared. Time to prepare for a coach like this, and they could throw some wrinkles in. Jake Browning, a capable enough quarterback. They got the playmakers on offense. They've got a good enough defense to at least maybe throw some wrinkles at this very explosive Alabama offense in this bowl game, with Jalen Hurts leading them and a great group of receivers as well, great running backs. I mean, Alabama's just loaded with playmakers. They can score on offense, score on defense, score on special teams, but I would not undersell Washington here. Clearly the class of the Pac-12 this season, if there's one Pac-12 team I may look to take points with, it's Washington. I would say right now I would lean to Washington plus the 14. But yeah, I don't know if I've got it in me to pull the trigger against Alabama. I think it'll just be a lean for me. Again, these two semifinals, to be honest with you, I don't have strong opinions on either one. I may not have a bet on either one, to be honest. They're the biggest games. I'm excited to watch them, but from a betting standpoint, I'll be honest, there's better bowls to bet than these two. But I think at anything 14 or better, lean Washington. But if it dips below that, I'd probably have to stay away. All right, let's go now to the second semifinal. Ohio State taking on Clemson. This one is going to be the Fiesta Bowl, Buckeyes and Tigers. And I'll tell you what, this is a real conundrum for me. We've got Ohio State laying 3 pretty much across the board. I will not bet against Urban Meyer with time to prepare. Period. It's that simple. Last year, bowl game against Notre Dame, extra time to prepare and practice. What's Ohio State do and Urban Meyer do at that time? They crush Notre Dame. 2 years ago, semifinals in the playoffs against Alabama. Time to prepare for Urban Meyer to get Cardale Jones ready. What do? They shred Alabama. Alabama does not even come close to stopping Ohio State in that game. They beat Alabama outright as underdogs. They beat Oregon then in the championship game to become national champions 2 years ago with Cardale Jones at quarterback. Again, Urban Meyer, phenomenal with extra time to prepare, with more than 1 week to prepare for a football game. And he's not been just doing this at Ohio State. Go back to the Tim Tebow days at Florida when they won the national championship. Time to prepare for a big game. Urban Meyer got his team ready to go, and they executed at a very high level. This is simply a coach that when you give him this amount of time to get ready for a big game, I do not bet against him. That being said, Ohio State's laying 3, and I'm convinced Clemson's the better of these two teams. And because to me, Ohio State, you look at what they've done, they lose to Penn State. They are fortunate as all hell to beat Wisconsin in overtime, and in fact, they got outgained in that game. They could have lost and maybe should have lost against Michigan in the big season finale against the Wolverines. They got a fortuitous pick 6 from Spate in that game. And basically, and it was just a troubling thing for Ohio State. I mean, they struggled. They got a few breaks. They got a couple of questionable calls to go their way, and able to beat Michigan in overtime in that football game. So I've got concerns just about how good Ohio State is. They have looked like a mediocre, nothing better than a good team. Not a great team, nothing better than a good team down the stretch of the season. And, Clemson does have the playmakers. It's not like Dabo Swinney and his coaching staff is unfamiliar with being able to prepare for a big game. They went through this last year when they played Oklahoma in the semifinal, and then they played Alabama in the national championship game. So this is not new territory for Clemson. But my concern here is I think Clemson's the better team. If I had to give you a gun to the head lean, and this is a game, again, I don't have a strong opinion on, probably not betting this game, but if I had to, I would look Clemson plus 3. But, the great equalizer is Urban Meyer, his track record at Ohio State, at Florida, pretty much everywhere he's been. You give him time to prepare and practice for a game, especially a lot of time like this, he is going to have his team ready. And that's my biggest fear with backing the Clemson side in that game. All right, let's wrap it up. It is time to go for our video best bet for the Saturday and Monday bowl slate. We're going to go back to Kentucky, Georgia Tech. I talked about the fact that I think both offenses are going to have the better of it. I firmly agree with that. I think you're going to see a shootout between Kentucky and Georgia Tech. Let's go over 62, Kentucky, Georgia Tech, over the total between the Wildcats and Yellow Jackets on Saturday, December 31st. That is your video best bet in college football. All right, that'll wrap it up.
That's right, the 8th annual SBR Forum Bash will be held at the breathtaking all-inclusive Hard Rock Hotel in Punta Cana on Super Bowl weekend. Join Natalie Rydstrom and the Odds Couple as they mingle with SBR pros and have fun under the sun. Stay tuned for video coverage of Bash activities, including a $5,000 poker tournament sponsored by uwager.eu. Only on SBR, your sportsbook authority since 1999.